What we talk about when we talk about the Winged Dragon of Ra is usually its Sphere mode, because that's the Ra card that's actually good. And it's great, even with a huge wave of modern Ra cards from 2020's legendary duelist Raging Ra, and the general support for the Divine that has come with the structure deck Slifer the Sky Dragon and structure deck Obelisk the Tormentor, Ra remained a competitive nullity. But in Duel Links, the Golden God of Ancient Egypt was, and is, powerful enough to claim this list's number 5 spot. Now, while the gods possessed, well, godly abilities in the anime, the TCG translation of their effects left some to be desired. Literally, not everything was imported, including their resistance to spell, trap, and monster effects. More specifically, in the case of Ra, which was first made available as a Shonen Jump magazine promo in December 2009, its ability to gain the sum of its tributes didn't make it to the card text. Instead, the only way to give your Ra some oomph was by draining your own life points down to 100 and transferring that total to Ra's attack and defense. This synergized not at all with Ra's activated effect to pay 1000 life points to destroy a monster on the field. Ra would get a little better with the Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere mode, which could tribute itself to summon Ra from your deck with 4000 attack and defense. And then in another attempt to correctively bring Ra's power level up to an echo of its anime strength, we got the Winged Dragon of Ra Phoenix mode, a totally effect-immune level 10 Divine Beast with 4000 attack and defense, and the ability to pay 1000 life points to send another card to the grave without targeting it. It was pretty strong, but could only be summoned from the graveyard after the Winged Dragon of Ra gets sent there from the field. During the end phase, the Phoenix would disappear itself back to the grave, floating into a copy of Spear mode from the deck. A major function of the modern Ra support from Rage of Ra was making Phoenix mode somewhat playable. Stuck with the tremendous downside that it can only be summoned from the hand by its own triple tribute effect, the Winged Dragon of Ra was hard to use. However, Sphere mode could bring it out by ignoring its summoning conditions, and that's something the new Ra cards could keep doing. For the purposes of this list, we're just going to stick with the Ra support that made it to Duel Links, because even with Guardian Slime, Blaze Cannon, and Lucky Chant, Ra couldn't make an impact on the TCG. The Winged Dragon of Ra had long been available at 2 copies in Duel Links by the time New Year's Eve of 2023 rolled around, bringing with it Phoenix Blaze main box and a whole bunch of Ra cards, including the True Sun God, Millennium Revelation, Darkspell Regeneration, Sun God Unification, as well as both Sphere mode and Phoenix mode. These cards were cool, but the real game changer for Ra was Yami Merrick's new skill, Immortal Sun God. This skill locked you into only being able to special summon monsters that were or contained the Winged Dragon of Ra in their attacks. But for that hefty price tag, you could discard a Ra to search a Ra card or Monster Reborn from your deck. Finally, at no additional cost, once you had a Divine Beast monster on the field, you could fetch Monster Reborn from graveyard back to hand. This gave Ra decks a tremendous amount of consistency, effectively making every card that wasn't a defensive tech a starter. If you didn't have a specific Ra card in your hand, you could search it with the True Sun God and then use that or something else as discard fodder to power up your next Ra search. You also got another discard as cost for Millennium Revelation to search Monster Reborn. The flexibility of the skill and multiple searches and discards made it really hard for this deck to break. But basically what you needed was a Phoenix mode in deck or grave, the original Ra in grave, and Millennium Revelation on the field with Monster Reborn in hand. Then you could combine Revelation's effects with Monster Reborn to revive Ra and send it to the grave with the True Sun God, which has the option to dump Phoenix mode from deck before sending Ra and triggering its upgraded form's graveyard effect. Once Phoenix is risen, you probably got 3 or so unblockable blasts to smite your opponent's defenses. The Phoenix doesn't have to worry about many potential defenses like Flora Shield, White Princess, and Enemy Controller, since it's unaffected by all card effects. So if your opponent doesn't have a Kiteroid or Rainbow Life, they're probably in trouble. And the game will probably be over soon, since one attack from Phoenix mode is usually enough to OTK. Duel Links' lower starting life value of 4000 really reduces the threshold on a lot of OTK decks that can't quite muster the 8000 or so required to score wins in the TCG. And that's why the Winged Dragon of Ra is good here. So watch out next time you see Yami Merrick, because the Shadow Realm is hungry. But before one is condemned to the Shadow Realm, one must lose a Shadow game, which is also the name of the Yami Merrick skill responsible for the number 4 deck on this list, Shadow Game Burn. Since this deck relies on a Duel Links skill, it's a Duel Links original without a proper counterpart in the TCG, but we can talk a little bit about Burn. In the TCG, Burn is relatively weak, often reserved for beating the clock in long game 3s outside of gimmicky FTKs. Burn is less reliable than building a board that can attack immediately for game. It's just a little slower, which is a poor fit for Yu-Gi-Oh's breakneck meta speed. And in fairness, if Burn were faster, it'd be broken, so it's kind of a delicate balance. But in Duel Links, Burn went like crazy. We already talked about Téa Burn in Plat 1, but there was another broken Burn skill that had to be super nerfed. See, again, with the lower starting life points, it's a lot easier to win through Burn when you have 4,000 less life points to burn through. Burn strategies would catch a blanket nerf when most individual instances of Burn were halved in September of 2019. And this was a big knock to Shadow Game Burn, as we'll shortly cover, but not actually enough to banish the deck completely. But before we get into more ways of this janky strategy had to be adjusted to outjank the game, let's look into what Shadow Game as a skill actually did in its original iteration. It was a very simple and powerful skill. During the end phase, the turn player would take damage equal to the number of cards in their graveyard times 100. This might seem small, but over long games with lots of stall, that number would rise, especially if your opponent was running mill cards like Warm Worm, Assault on GHQ. With Assault on GHQ able to destroy one of your monsters to mill 2 from your opponent's deck, and Warm Worm being able to mill 3 on destruction, you could dump 5 of your opponent's cards to the grave in one activation. Now, the extra 500 damage at the end of the turn might not sound like a lot, but Shadow Game burners would often run multiple copies of Skull Invitation to capitalize on the DPS of their mill strategy. This continuous trap would deal 300 damage to the owner of each card sent to the graveyard. This means that with one copy of Skull Invitation live, the Assault on GHQ/Warm Worm combo would mill 5, burn for 1500, and then burn again for 500 plus whatever else was in your opponent's graveyard during the end phase. Things are starting to stack. You did have to be careful because Shadow Game and Skull Invitation would burn you too, but unlike your opponent, you could prepare for the chip damage coming your way. Cards like Kite Roid, Draining Shield, and Rainbow Light helped you tread water while your adversaries sank into the dark depths of the Shadow Realm. The final piece of this strategy was Lava Golem, a level 8 fiend that could be special summoned to your opponent's side of the field by attributing 2 of their monsters. On its own, this is a great way to clear opposing monsters with nasty habits of sticking around, but in conjunction with Skull Invitation and Shadow Game, one summon of Lava Golem would clear 2 threats, deal 600 burn damage to Skull Invitation, deal 1000 through Lava Golem, and then burn for an extra 200 during your opponent's next end phase. And then, if you have 2 Skull Invitations live, things got nasty, and the hungry shadows gorged themselves on the souls of the vanquished. The great halving of Duel Links' burn damage would make a Lava Golem much less of a threat, since it could now only deal 500 burn damage during your opponent's standby phases instead of 1000. But Shadow Game Burn would remain rogue viable until October 21 of 2020, when the skill was picked apart into a shadow of its former self. The new Shadow Game capped the damage inflicted to players during each end phase at 400, and also prevented the burn from activating at all if a player had 1000 or less life points. And that was curtains for Yami Merrick's devious Shadow Game. For a long time, this skill brutally captured Merrick's predilection for sadistically playing with his food before finally cutting into it with a killing blow from the Winged Dragon of Ra. And those who suffered the deck's death of 1000 cuts will remember this skill and despair. While the Fortune Lady archetype never had a good fortune of being particularly good in the TCG, their ominous fortune telling would be the beginning of the end for your opponents in Duel Links, and that's why they're fated to catch number 3 on this list. The Fortune Ladies debuted in 2009 with a starting lineup of monsters with the shared archetypal effect to gain attack points based on their levels, with their levels increasing during each standby phase. In addition to their incremental attack gains, Fortune Ladies Fire, Wind, and Water had on summon effects that could be activated by the summoning effects of Fortune Ladies Light and Dark. Fortune Lady Earth was the largest, biggest attacker, and support like Fortune's Future, Time Passage, Inherited Fortune, and Bending Destiny made these attribute variable spellcasters a little more flexible. Unfortunately, not flexible enough. Fortune Lady likes effect to summon another Fortune Lady from deck when it's removed from the field by card effect misses timing all the time. And although it does synergize with the Future Visions field spell, it's the only Fortune Lady that doesn't mind being banished that way. Fortune Ladies got a little better with their 2019 support, with cards like Versatile Tuner, Fortune Lady Pass, Search and Extenders like Fortune Vision and Fortune Lady Calling, and a new boss in the form of Fortune Lady Every. The Fortune Lady Rewind trap gave you a little bounce back, but wasn't relevant enough to spend more time on. Anyway, these new Fortune cards gave Fortune Ladies something to work towards, and between Fortune Lady Water and Fortune's Future, now somewhat usable with the new support, this strategy was able to realize a significant amount of draw power. It even see experimentation with Exodia strategies, combining Stardust Charge Warrior and TG Hyper Librarian with Desynchro, and generic draw cards like Allure of Darkness, Gold Mooncoin, and Spellbook of Knowledge. Sadly, this and other Fortune Lady variants were unable to see a significant amount of competitive play, even while being capable of pulling a surprise yugioh on you. Not so in Duel Links. In Duel Links, the Fortune Ladies prospered, with Fortune Lady Every, Fortune Lady Calling, and Fortune Lady Past all released in August of 2019 with the Valhalla Calling main box, and the Destiny Decided Dark Signer Carly Carmine event running at the same time. Fortune Ladies had everything they needed to be good in Duel Links. By grinding Dark Signer Carly Carmine to level 35, Fortune Vision could be used at 1 copy, and later too after the Fighties level cap was increased to 40 in June of 2020. This gave the Fortune Lady deck a hot start, since Fortune Lady Light and Fortune Lady Pass plus Fortune Lady Calling and Fortune Vision could result in a Fortune Lady Water summoned from the deck, activating her +2 draw effect. If any of those cards happen to be Fortune's Future, then you could return to the grave the Fortune Lady banished by Fortune Lady Light to draw another 2. Combined with Wonder Wand, Stardust Charge Warrior, Desynchro, and level adjusted skills, it was possible to enact a Fortune Lady Exodia FTK in Duel Links too. But the real relevance of Fortune Ladies at the time of their Duel Links spotlight was Fortune Lady Every, a level 7 Dark Spellcaster that had stats equal to 400 times her level. This meant she hit the field with a decently high 2800 attack and defense. During your standby phase, she'd gain another level and another 400 points. But more importantly, she got to non-target banish one of your opponent's monsters. At the start of the Duel Links meta, this was a premium degree of removal. And Fortune Lady Every was herself hard to remove, because if she was in the graveyard, you could banish another spellcaster from grave during your opponent's end phase to bring her back. For a while, summoning Fortune Lady Every in defense position and passing was a respectable opening hand that promised an exacting follow-up on the next turn. The Fortune Ladies also synergized with Fortune Lady Every's graveyard banish. If you had extra copies of Fortune's Future, you could easily recoup less spellcasters, or move a banished Fortune Lady Every back to the grave to let her revive again. She was a mean boss, and spellcaster decks like attuned to level 7 are still running her today, and you can find her occasionally splashed into Perform Mage, Shadow, and Witchcrafter decks amongst others. And while we're on the subject, the number 2 spot goes to a bustling little guild of spell technicians on the outskirts of Endymion's magical citadel, and that's right, it's the Witchcrafters. A relatively recent archetype, the Witchcrafters made their TCG debut in 2019, with a few waves of new support in the years following. The big idea of the Witchcrafters is that they work together to pull off a victory. Main deck low levels like Witchcrafter Shemeti and Witchcrafter Jenny help cycle through your high level Witchcrafters like Witchcrafter Madame Veri and Witchcrafter Golem Aruru. They have a lot of spells that let you recur and protect your Witchcrafter monsters, like Witchcrafter Holiday, Witchcrafter Creation, Witchcrafter Draping, and others, with every Witchcrafter spell sharing the archetypal effect to add itself from the graveyard to hand during the end phase of a turn in which you control a Witchcrafter monster and you haven't used its other effect. Witchcrafter Golem Aruru and Witchcrafter Hain have removal effects, but Witchcrafter Madame Vere leads her union and is able to buff her and her guildmates in battle, scaling off a number of spells with different names in your hand. As a quick effect, when your spellcasters engage in battle, Vare can boost your monster's stats by 1000 times the number of unique spell cards you reveal. This ability can be used while attacking or defending, and it's not the only quick effect that Vare can levy. She can also discard one spell to negate the effects of every face-up monster currently controlled by your opponent for the rest of the turn, which is pretty good. And in Duel Links, very good. But the Witchcrafter's main trouble in the TCG is speed. The fast pace of modern games doesn't tend to favor decks that take too long to set up, or enact their control strategies reactively rather than as a stun. But on the condensed field of Duel Links, the strategic inventions of the Witchcrafters ironically got the space they needed to breathe. In a format where Invoked Cocytus got super banned for being a 2900 defense wall with protection, Witchcrafter Madame Vere could rally her spells and constituents to carve a meta niche for the crafty Witch Guild. Smaller deck sizing meant it was easier for Witchcrafter spells to occupy a larger portion of your overall cards without having to dilute your pool with spells you don't feel like running, or too many duplicates depending on your Witchcrafting style. With Madame Vere, Shemeta, and Pitori, plus the best spells available from Dune 2020 main box, which is Sorcery, you could reliably get all the cards you need from one place, and collect other pieces from Téa Gardner in the Darkside Dimensions world. This deck was relatively cheap since you'd only need one copy of Witchcrafter Madame Vere, meaning you could reset Witch's Sorcery as soon as you pulled the other UR, Shemeta. But above its approachable cost, Witchcrafters just had a lot of interaction, and could negate multiple monsters at once without targeting, something that was difficult to overcome in Duel Links at the time. Witchcrafter, Hane, Praetorian Creation would release in December of 2023 with the mini-box Explosion of Meteor. And this new support, plus the new Spellcaster Exchange skill, ensured that while it might not hold tiered status, it remains a respectable deck able to consistently nab King of Games placements. This list's number 1 pick is all about potential. But sadly, the typical conversation about Red Eyes Black Dragon and its eclectic mix of spin-off cards is usually about how Joey Wheeler's Dragon of Choice fails to live up to its potential. That's why we're proud to award Red Eyes Black Dragon the top spot on this list of decks that were only good in Duel Links. Before diving into the Red Eyes deck history, let's talk a little bit more about the thematic significance of Red Eyes Black Dragon and its companion cards. In the original Duel Monsters anime, the ferocious Blue Eyes White Dragon symbolized raw power, and was fittingly used by Seto Kaiba, a cutthroat duelist and executive who was accustomed to getting his way and having way more money than anybody else. Red Eyes Black Dragon was used by Joey Wheeler, a scrappy kid with more heart than resources and experience, but the will to get up every time the world knocked him down. And that's why Red Eyes represents potential. Red Eyes Black Dragon is a promise that Joey will realize the greatness in his heart if he just keeps on trucking. Yu-Gi-Oh! Creator and mangaka Kazuki Takahashi has gone on record that, by his estimation, Joey Wheeler is stronger than both the Pharaoh and Seto Kaiba, who are rigid in their reliance on pre-existing power, be that money or ancient magic. In his own translated words, "Compared to Joey, I consider Dark Yugi and Seto weak characters." But despite Kazuki Takahashi's blessing, Joey's cards didn't perform so hot in the TCG. While Dark Magician and Blue Eyes White Dragon would go on to develop semi-coherent archetypes and identities, Red Eyes Black Dragon decks would dabble in a little of this and a little of that without really hitting their stride. They've got Gemini monsters like Red Eyes Black Flare Dragon and Red Eyes Archfiend of Lightning, burn cards like Red Eyes Soul, Red Eyes Burn, and Infernal Fireblast, an Xyz monster, and miscellaneous equip-related cards like Black Metal Dragon, Red Eyes Fang with Chain, and Gearfried the Red Eyes Iron Knight. It has Red Eyes Fusion and a host of fusion monsters to support its attempt at burning, and equip Spell Warrior support. Despite possessing many fledgling strategies, the 2 Red Eyes cards to see large amounts of play were Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, a generic dragon extender, and Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, a powerful Dark Magician fusion. Dedicated Red Eyes decks continue to have potential without ever coming into their own, and that's where the story would end, at least until Konami prints further confused Red Eyes support. If it weren't for Duel Links, where Red Eyes Black Dragon wasn't just good, but bannably strong. While Red Eyes Black Dragon has been easily obtainable since the first days of Duel Links, the deck would reach its highest point of meta power with the Super Joey Roaming Duelist event. This event ran in May and July of 2017 and introduced Red Eyes Spirit and Red Eyes Insight, 2 powerful pieces of Red Eyes support that let you dump Red Eyes Black Dragon into the grave while searching its revival trap. With cards of the Red Stone added alongside Red Eyes Wyvern in June of the same year with the Crimson Kingdom main box, early Red Eyes decks could consistently draw into and recycle their boss dragon. Where this became wild was when paired with the counter trap Champion's Vigilance, an omni-negate with the activation condition that you must control a level 7 or higher normal monster. With Red Eyes so easy to search and field, Champion's Vigilance was both an easy include and itself easily obtainable by dueling Seto Kaiba at the gate. The first Duel Links ban list dropped in August of 2017 to stifle Téa burn strategies by limiting Restructor Revolution to 1. But the second ban list was all about Red Eyes, bringing Red Eyes Spirit down to 2 copies and locking Champion's Vigilance at 1. And this wouldn't be the last time that Red Eyes rocked the meta. Eventually, Red Eyes Spirit would come unbanned, but further Red Eyes strategies would incubate with the release of Red Eyes Slash Dragon, cover card for the January 2018 mini-box Residence of Contrast. While the fusion of Red Eyes Black Dragon and any warrior monster would arrive too late to leave an impact on the TCG, it was a force in Duel Links. Its considerable stat line and ability to negate target effects plus a floating effect in destruction raised the standard of what a boss monster could be in the Duel Links meta. In May of 2019, Structure Deck Return of the Red Eyes came to Duel Links, expanding access to Red Eyes Slash Dragon and Red Eyes Wyvern, while introducing other cards like Red Eyes Retro Dragon, Red Eyes Archfiend of Lightning, Return of the Red Eyes, and most importantly, Red Eyes Fusion. Although Black Metal Dragon would also release that May with the Blazing Rose main box, Red Eyes' new power would fade over time, getting crept out of meta as new and revamped decks like Harpies, Infernities, and Blue Eyes rose to prominence. November 2021 brought Chaotic Soldiers main box, and with it Archfiend Black Skull Dragon, Dark Armed the Dragon of Annihilation, and the new skill Red Eyes Roulette. Once per duel, you could choose a monster from a list of Red Eyes related cards to add to your deck, and then randomly add a Red Eyes card from deck before shuffling a Red Eyes card back from hand. The monsters you could choose from were Summon Skull, Red Eyes Archfiend of Lightning, Gearfried the Iron Knight, Gearfried the Red Eyes Iron Knight, Meteor Dragon Red Eyes Impact, and Meteor Dragon, with the most common choice being Summon Skull. Since Archfiend Black Skull Dragon was a fusion between Red Eyes normal monster and a level 6 or higher Archfiend normal monster, using Red Eyes Roulette to bury Skull was a great way to make sure you never drew into it, and could send it from deck with Red Eyes Fusion to create your scary Burn Dragon. This also freed players from having to choose between running Beast of Tolwar and milling the Archaic Wonders of the Sky mini box for copies of Summon Skull. Red Eyes Insight, being able to search Red Eyes Fusion, boosted the consistency of Roulette's normally random card search, and after a January 2022 skill tinkering, the skill was made available from turn 1 rather than on or after turn 4. After a stint in Selection Box Mini Volume 3, Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon would get a main box release with Maximum Gustav in February 2022. But their next major Red Eyes development would be getting Red Eyes Black Meteor Dragon in December 2023 mini box Explosion of Meteor, and a little later receiving the Red Eyes Reverse skill in June of 2024. This skill lets you summon Red Eyes Black Dragon without attributing, and also gave you a once per duel effect to set a Red Eyes Spell Trap card from your deck. If you didn't control the normal monster at activation, you would have to shuffle a card from your hand as a penalty, but that hardly offset the benefit offered by this new skill. And that brings us to the time of the script writing, where Red Eyes decks continue to be rogue viable, offering a path to King of Games for those duelists brave enough to realize their full potential. Alright, and that's the list. A lot of wild decks have found success in Duel Links and nowhere else. So if I missed your favorite, or if you have ideas for future videos just like this one, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments.